When you're preparing an image to post on Instagram, Pinterest, or any social media platform, it's a good idea to match your image to the size requirements of that platform so that the image displays the way that you expect it to. That's particularly true when the image will be persistent and prominent, like your Facebook cover or your YouTube channel art. So in this tutorial, we'll share a Photoshop technique for quickly changing the size of an image so it's just right for use on a social media site, in this case as channel art on YouTube. Even if you don't need YouTube channel art, you'll still find this method useful because you can apply it whenever you need to change an image to a specific size, for any social media platform or really for any use at all. So let's jump over to Photoshop. Here we have a photo that's a good choice for this project because it doesn't have important content at the edges that we have to worry about losing when we crop this image to resize it for social media. Let's check out the current size of this image by pressing and holding the information field in the bar at the bottom of the screen. Here you can see the dimensions of this photo in pixels, 3,500 pixels wide and 2,300 pixels high. A little online research would tell you that the best size for YouTube channel art is 2560 by 1440 pixels. So we're going to resize this photo to those specific dimensions. The perfect tool for resizing an image to a specific size is one you may not have thought of for this job. It's the crop tool. So select the crop tool in the toolbar, and in the options bar, go to the aspect ratio menu. In that menu, choose width by height by resolution. Then go to the first field and type in the width in pixels that you want for the final image. Remember we said that 2560 pixels is the best width for YouTube channel art, and 1440 is the best height. Now what's really important is that you type px for pixel after both the width and the height value here, or you won't get the result that you want. The next field is the resolution field, and it's optional for our purposes because resolution really isn't critical when you're making an image for use on screen. This boundary shows you a preview of the crop, and you can really see in this view that the final image is going to be a different aspect ratio of width to height than the original. And that's why we're using the crop tool for this technique, rather than another method like the image size command, because we're changing not only the size of the image, but also its aspect ratio. Cropping is necessary. Now let's work on positioning the subjects so the most important part, the children's heads, are in the center of the image vertically and horizontally, which seems to work best for YouTube. So I'll click inside the crop boundary, and I'll drag down and over to the left a little. That leaves some white space inside the crop boundary. There are two possible ways to deal with that. You could hold down the Shift key and come over to one of the corners and drag inward until there's no white space left inside the crop boundary. And that would probably work okay for this image. But I'm going to put that back to show you another way to do it. And that is to come up to the options bar and check Content Aware. And that will cause Photoshop to automatically fill in this white area by creating content from scratch. Whichever way you do it, you'll end up with an image that's the recommended dimensions for YouTube, 2560 by 1440 pixels, because we're using that width by height by resolution option up in the aspect ratio menu. So let's click the checkbox at the top right to commit the crop and have Photoshop fill in those white areas for us. And it's done a seamless job. Now choose File Save and save the cropped image as a JPEG. And let's jump over to YouTube to upload the resized photo as YouTube channel art. In YouTube, navigate to the My Channel space from your identity icon up in the top right, and then click Customize Channel. If your view looks different than mine, then just navigate through whatever screens you see until you get to a button that allows you to edit channel art. In this screen, you can upload the photo that you just saved from Photoshop. Take a look at the previews of how your channel art will look on YouTube on different devices. If you like it, click Select, and in just a moment, you'll see your new channel art at the top of your YouTube channel. The Photoshop techniques that you learned here not only work for resizing channel art for YouTube, you can use the same techniques to resize an image to the specific size requirements of any social media platform. If you have a photo that's pretty dark, like this one, Photoshop can help you to brighten it up so the hidden details shine through. In this tutorial, we'll lighten this underexposed photo, changing it from this dark version where a lot of the content is hidden, to a lighter version that reveals expressive detail in this animal's face. To do this, locate your Layers panel and go to the bottom of the Layers panel and click the black and white circle icon. That opens this menu of adjustments. There are a number of adjustments that you could use to try to brighten a photo, from the simple brightness contrast adjustment to the more technical curves adjustment. We're going to use levels because levels give you control over different tonal values without being too complicated. So choose levels in this menu, and that creates a brand new adjustment layer, a levels adjustment layer, above the layer that contains the photo. Whatever changes we make in this adjustment layer will affect the photo on the layer below without making direct changes to that photo. The adjustment layer not only will protect the photo, it also gives you flexibility to change or even delete the adjustment in the future. Making this adjustment layer also popped open the Properties panel with the levels controls that we'll use to brighten this photo. I'm just going to move my Properties panel out of the way so you have a better view of my photo. To brighten the photo, sometimes all you have to do is go into the Levels Properties panel and click the Auto button. That automatically moves the sliders under this chart. These are the three sliders I'm talking about, and this is the chart, which is called the histogram. The histogram is a representation of the tonal values in an image. So if you like the way that the Auto button made the photo look, you're done. But if you have a different vision, you can drag the sliders under the histogram yourself. Let's do that. I'm going to start with the white slider here, which controls the brightness of the lightest parts of the photo, like maybe the highlight in the subject's eye. I'm going to drag to the left to set the lightest parts of this photo to pure white. As you drag, if you want to see which parts of the photo you're affecting, you have the option to hold down the Option key on a Mac or the Alt key on Windows. That switches to this mask view in which the white areas are the parts of the photo that you're pushing to pure white, and that means there'll be no detail visible there. So you don't want to go too far with this adjustment. I suggest you stop just about here, when you see just a few small areas of white in this mask view. Just that one change made the photo definitely brighter, but what will make the biggest difference is to brighten up the midtones, the gray values in the image. And those are controlled by the next slider, the gray slider. So let's drag the gray slider toward the left. By the way, if you want to use the same values that I am, you can see those in these boxes right underneath the histogram. So we're looking at the center box now as we drag the gray slider to the left. Now, not everything in this photo has to be brighter. We might get a more natural look if we push the very darkest parts to a rich dark black. So for that, you can drag the black slider here in the other direction, to the right, or you can enter a low value in this leftmost box. Brightening the photo has made a lot of difference, but it's also brought out some things that I might want to hide, like some of the content and maybe some of the digital noise in the darker areas of the photo. To do that, I'm going to use this layer mask that comes with the adjustment layer. I'll make sure that's highlighted, and then I'll make sure that my foreground color is set to black. I'll select the brush tool, and I'll paint with black on the layer mask to hide the brightness adjustment from part of the photo. If you want to partially hide the adjustment, you can lower the opacity of the brush. And one way to do that is just to type a number on your keyboard. So I'll type 3 for 30% opacity. And now I'm painting with gray rather than black, and that's partially hiding our brightness adjustment. You can see those changes here if you look at the layer mask. The black on the layer mask is concealing the adjustment, the white on the layer mask is revealing the adjustment, and the gray is partially concealing it. To see how far we've come, I'm going to turn the adjustment layer off by clicking its eye icon. So there's the original dark photo, and here's how it looks with this brightening levels adjustment layer. Being able to see more of the craggy details in the chimpanzee's face has really changed the mood of the photo and allowed us to see a detailed, expressive portrait that tells us a lot more about this remarkable subject. Adding fun objects to an image for a social media post is a great way to build your social brand. In this tutorial, we'll add some of the objects you see here, using built-in graphics that come with Photoshop and some shapes that you can quickly create yourself. Let's get started by adding these texting bubbles to a clean copy of this image. The text bubbles are objects that come with Photoshop, and they're found in the Custom Shape library. To get there, select the Rectangle tool in the toolbar, and in the flyout menu, choose Custom Shape tool. Go up to the Options bar for the Custom Shape tool and click on the Shape Picker. Then click the gear icon on the Shape Picker, and from here, go down to the category of Custom Shapes labeled Talk Bubbles, and then click OK. And here you can choose from a variety of talk bubbles. I'm going to select this one, and then move into the image and drag out a text bubble. Let's change the color of that by going up to the Options bar and clicking the Fill field and clicking on a different color swatch. Notice over in the Layers panel that Photoshop automatically made a new shape layer for us. We can do the same things to this layer we could do to a regular pixel layer. For example, I could get the Move tool and click and drag to move the contents of the layer, or I could flip the layer so this little piece is on the other side horizontally by going to the Edit menu and Transform and Flip Horizontal. I can even duplicate the layer by going to the layer in the Layers panel, right-clicking and choosing Duplicate Layer. And with the new shape layer selected, I'll move the second shape layer into place. And let's give this one a different color by going back to the Custom Shape tool and then up to the Fill field in the Options bar and choosing a different color. All of the objects that you make with the shape tools are vector objects, and that means that they have smooth edges and you can change their size or otherwise transform them as much as you like without harming the object. So let's say that I want to make this green bubble smaller. I'll press the shortcut Command-T or Control-T on Windows, and then I'll hold down the Shift key so I don't distort the object, and I'm going to drag to make this smaller. Or I can just drag any of the edges like this. And then I can move that box right where I want it. And then to commit those changes, I'll move away from the object and I'll click. All that's left to do is to add some text. So I'm going to select the Type tool and I'll type a line of text. When I move my cursor away from the text, it becomes a Move tool, and I can click and drag to move the text wherever I want. I'll move a little bit further away from the text, and I'll click to commit the text. Let's add a little more text. And we're done with the talk bubbles. Now let's add a different kind of object, and that is an object that you draw yourself with one of the geometric shape tools. So for that, I'm going to go down to the Custom Shape tool again in the toolbar, and this time I'll select the Rectangle tool. Moving to the image, and I'm going to draw a frame around part of the image. That opens the Properties panel with some of the same options that you'll find up in the Options bar for this tool. So in either place, I can change the fill, which I'm going to set to no fill, and I can add a stroke around the shape, give it a color, and increase the size of the stroke. If I want to change the shape of this frame, again I'll press Command-T on the Mac or Control-T on Windows, and then I'll click and drag on any of the anchor points. And I'll press Enter or Return on the keyboard to commit that change. And over in the Layers panel, we have a brand new layer, the Rectangle Shape layer, for that frame. When I click off of that layer, the blue path goes away. So that's how you can add objects to an image that you can now upload to your social media platforms so that you've got a unique statement for your social media brand. When you're photographing in a city, it's hard to avoid getting unwanted details like these wires in your photos. In this tutorial, we'll use some of Photoshop's amazing retouching tools to remove these wires from this scene. To start, let's make a new layer for our touch-ups. Go to the bottom of the Layers panel and click the Create New Layer button. And let's name this layer Cleanup. A good place to start when you're removing wires is with the Spot Healing Brush tool. I'll select that tool here in the toolbar, and then go up to the Options bar and check Sample All Layers, so that the tool samples content from the photo on the background layer and uses it to lay down a patch on the cleanup layer. Come into the image, and you want to make your brush tip just a little bit bigger than the wire that you want to remove. A shortcut for doing that is to use the bracket keys on your keyboard, which are right next to the P key. If I want to make the brush tip smaller, I'll press the left bracket key several times. If I want to make it bigger, I'll press the right bracket key. Then click and drag over the wire, and it disappears. When the wire is straight like this, you can sometimes remove the whole thing at once by clicking at the top of the wire and then holding down the Shift key and coming down to the bottom of the wire and clicking there. With the brush tip a little bigger, pressing the right bracket key, I'm going to click and drag over this tangle of wires at the bottom left, and they disappear. If the Spot Healing Brush tool doesn't give you the result that you want, you can try its neighbor, the Healing Brush tool. To access that tool, press on the Spot Healing Brush tool in the toolbar and choose the Healing Brush tool. And then in the image, hold down the Option key, that's the Alt key on Windows, as you click near the wire that you want to remove. That changes the cursor to a target. Then click to start sampling from under your cursor, and then click on the wire and drag. And that white crosshair shows you the source from which the good pixels are being sampled. Now, if you want to see why the wire has disappeared, let's go over to the Layers panel and turn off the background layer. And there you'll see the patch that we've made that's hiding the wire on the layer below. So if you don't like some of this patch, you can always erase it, or you could delete the entire cleanup layer and start again. Part of this wire is crossing over a pretty intricate pattern in the front of the building. The good news is that the Spot Healing Brush tool can often help there too. Let's give it a try. I'll go back and select the Spot Healing Brush tool in the toolbar. I'll click on one side of the wire, and then I'll hold the Shift key, and I'll click on the other side. And the Spot Healing Brush tool did a pretty good job of removing the wire even on the front of the building. Now, it's not perfect. There are some areas to fill in. For that, we can use the Clone Stamp tool. The Clone Stamp tool works much the same way as the Healing Brush tool. It samples pixels and then it lays them down, but it doesn't try to blend them into the surrounding image like the Healing Brush tool does. I'll select the Clone Stamp tool here in the toolbar. In the Options bar, I'll set the Sample field to Current and Below. Then I'll move into a part of the image that needs fixing, maybe right down here. I'm going to have to make my brush tip pretty small for this. I'll hold down the Option key, that's the Alt key on Windows, and the cursor changes to a target, just like it did for the Healing Brush tool. I'll click to sample some pixels, and then I'll take my finger off of the Option or Alt key, and I'll move in and I'll start to paint with these pixels. Now this can take some time to really get right, so if you're following along, you're welcome to come back later and work on the front of the building a little more. To see how far we've come, I'm going to double-click the Hand tool to fit the entire image on screen again, and then I'll go over to the Layers panel, and I'm going to turn the cleanup layer off by clicking its eye icon. So there's the original image, and here it is after just a little cleanup with Photoshop's retouching tools. If the colors in a photograph don't look quite right to you, it could be something as simple as a lack of color saturation that can make a photo look a little dull or washed out. In that case, try adding an extra pop of color saturation in just the right places, as we'll do in this tutorial. To take this photo from this to this. When you want to intensify colors in a photo that features a person like this, it's a good idea to try a vibrance adjustment first, because a vibrance adjustment protects colors found in skin tones from getting too saturated. To add a vibrance adjustment, go to the bottom of the Layers panel and click this black and white circle icon and choose Vibrance. That adds a vibrance adjustment layer above the selected layer, and whatever adjustment you make on this vibrance layer will affect all the layers below. That also popped out the Properties panel. In the Properties panel, if you increase saturation, notice how quickly the model's face gets oversaturated. So I'm going to put that back to 0, and let's try moving the Vibrance slider to the right instead. I can drag Vibrance way over, increasing the intensity of the blue in the scarf and some of the other accent colors without overdoing the saturation in the model's face. If you like that result, then you're done. But what if you want to target certain colors in the photo to make just those colors more saturated? For that, you'll add a different kind of adjustment layer, a hue saturation adjustment layer. So I'm going to go over to the Layers panel and click the eye icon on the Vibrance layer to turn that layer off for the time being, and then go down to the bottom of the Layers panel, click the black and white circle icon, and choose a hue saturation adjustment. That creates a new adjustment layer in the Layers panel, and it opens the hue saturation controls in the Properties panel. There's a saturation slider here, and dragging that to the right is going to make the skin tones oversaturated. So let's do this another way. I'm going to select this tool called the Targeted Adjustment tool, and I'll move into the image and I'm going to click on the green veil. And notice that that changed this menu to greens. What this means is that when I drag the saturation slider to the right, only the greens in the photo will get the additional saturation. The changes we just made affect the greens wherever they appear in the photo. But what if you wanted to get even more precise about where you're saturating colors? In that case, you can make use of the layer mask that comes with every adjustment layer. To practice that, let's go down to the bottom of the Layers panel again, click that black and white icon, and choose Hue Saturation. And here, there's a new Hue Saturation layer. With that new Hue Saturation layer selected, I'll go to the Properties panel, and this time I'm going to choose to saturate the yellows. And I'll drag the saturation slider over to the right. I like the way that looks on the bracelets and on the scarf, but not so much on the model's skin. So let's hide the adjustment from the entire photo and then paint it in just where we want it. I'll make sure that I have black as the foreground color down here at the bottom of the toolbar, and then to fill that layer mask with the foreground color, I'll press Option plus Delete on the Mac or Alt plus Backspace on Windows. Now there is no yellow adjustment showing anywhere on the photo. Let's switch the foreground color to white by clicking this double-pointed arrow or just pressing X on the keyboard. Select the brush tool and move into the image and paint with white wherever you want to bring back that yellow saturation. Here and here, maybe here. I'm going to go ahead and do that in a few different places, and then by the magic of movies, I'll skip ahead to show you my final. Adding just those little pops of saturation to specific colors has taken this photo to here from back here where we started, giving it a few pops of color that really bring it to life.